The Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia are an outdoor adventurer's dream. Home to America's newest national park, New River Gorge, this area is booming with tourism. But what few probably know is that to get to some of the park's most popular destinations, visitors must pass through a small town where, for generations, this rural community has been living a nightmare.
Billy Evans, he died there of cancer.
Darrell Thomas has called Minden home his entire life. He took us for a walk on what he calls Death Valley Highway through the center of town.
Mr. John Small, Alice Small, they both died of cancer. Mr. and Miss Bill Hazlett, they both died of cancer. Here at the Miss Schoolcraft, she died of throat cancer.
So many cancers in one place. It's a devastating reality for this once thriving coal mining town where there are many reminders of its past, like the sign for Scrapper's Corner, where miners used to settle their differences after work, and the elementary school abandoned years ago due to so few children. Minden's fortunes changed in the 1980s about the time a local factory went bankrupt. That's when hundreds of containers filled with a chemical known as polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCB, were left behind on the property, contaminating the soil and water. PCBs have been linked to cancer and were banned in the U.S. in 1979. But before health risks were known, they were treated as harmless industrial chemicals. Minden locals told us that for many years, spent PCBs were dumped in mine shafts, sprayed on dirt roads to keep down dust, and even used by townspeople as fire starter. Minden once had a population of about 2,000. Today, it's down to less than 250 people. Where'd they all go?
A lot of them died. I can name you 300-400 people that's died with cancer.
Lifelong resident and four-time cancer survivor Susie Worley Jenkins has been sounding the alarm about Minden's health worries for years. Is Minden a cancer cluster?
I believe so, yes.
Why does the state say it isn't?
They don't want to accept responsibility, just like EPA doesn't.
According to local Congresswoman Carol Miller, it's past time for Washington to step up. The cancer epidemic here, she told us, has reached crisis levels.
Everyone's had members of their family who've had some type of cancer, and to have so much of it here does raise a red flag. We have to get with the EPA to say, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to remedy this problem?
The EPA claimed it cleaned up Minden's PCBs in 1987, but it was forced to return in 1990 and again in 1997 after more of these cancer-causing chemicals were discovered. The agency removed nearly 4,800 tons of contaminated topsoil. Then, in 2002, an attempt to seal in the remaining contaminants was made. The EPA official who implemented the unproven cleanup plan was later convicted for falsifying his academic credentials. So the EPA comes to Minden. Their workers are dressed in hazmat suits. They're using respirators, but they tell the residents there's nothing to worry about.
Yes, that is true.
Some of the locals offered the EPA workers an opportunity to drink tap water, and they refused to do that.
That is true.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
In a written statement, the EPA said, the complex nature of cancer makes it challenging to establish a connection between cancers or other illnesses and environmental exposures. The EPA works closely with the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection to be responsive and address concerns as they arise with the community. The old factory site is not the only problem this town faces. At the other end of Minden was a landfill that operated for more than 50 years. State officials told Eyewitness News the site never had an operating permit, so they don't have records of it. But locals told us hazardous waste was routinely sent there before a 1976 federal law banned the practice.
One day they had a horse in there and they just put it in there and burn it.
That landfill drains into the New River, which is the source of drinking water for the entire region. And it's where thousands of tourists go swimming, boating, and whitewater rafting, including at America's newest national park. Many residents, like Stephen Hazlett, who represents Minden on the nearby city council, are not only worried about their health, they also feel trapped because their life savings are stuck in homes they cannot sell.
My house is worthless.
Residents believe the only workable solution is for the federal government to relocate everyone to a safer community.
If your house is on fire, you're not going to sit in the house. You're going to move. Minden is on fire with all these chemicals and toxins.
Who here has had cancer or has a family member or close friend who's had cancer? By a show of hands.
At a spirited town meeting, the consensus is that federal and state authorities have ignored Minden for far too long.
Buying time until what?
The office of Governor Jim Justice told Eyewitness News the Minden site is currently an EPA-led site, and the relocation of residents in or near Superfund sites due to health concerns related to the site is solely at their discretion. Cancer hangs over this town like a storm cloud, but if you look at the state cancer registry, you wouldn't know it. That's because it documents the physical location where someone died, not where they actually lived. Because Minden has no medical facilities, nearly everyone dies someplace else. That creates a misleading picture that locals say is one of the reasons they've been ignored. In 2019, Minden was finally named a Superfund site, one of 11 in West Virginia, and nearly 1,300 nationwide. Most Superfund sites are at current or former military bases and industrial facilities. In Minden's case, the Superfund designation came without any money or resources to clean up the contamination.
It's like getting a participation trophy. It's kind of meaningless, isn't it?
Thought they'd shut us up. Basically what they did.
So all these years later, Minden's toxic legacy continues to endanger its remaining residents.
Is that how this story ends, that one day the last person who lives in Minden just passes away and that's it?
Eventually Minden will be gone.
Mark Hyman, Eyewitness News.